Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the view from the opposition. This week it comes from Joe Bray, who covers Manchester City for the Manchester Evening News, a familiar friend of the podcast. So we do appreciate him coming back on. He's coming back on just a couple of hours before he has to head down to see Pep Guardiola. There's plenty to talk about. I'm really looking forward to this one, Joe, because I think Man City are just such a team of intrigue this campaign. So plenty of questions to get in. The first being, how are you? Are you doing well?
Yes, not too bad, thank you. It's been quite a up and down season for City, and I think last time we spoke, it was, oh yeah, City are gonna win the league. They're playing well, and now it's completely the opposite.
Yeah, it's been such an interesting campaign, as we've both said that. I mean, in recent weeks, it looked like their form has turned a little bit. The last kind of 5 or 6 games, especially in the league, but I guess losing to Real Madrid in such fashion in midweek doesn't put them in good stead for this game. How do you think that result will impact them going into Saturday against Newcastle?
I think it's just a reminder that the problems that were there before Christmas still haven't gone away, and the way that they lost to Arsenal in the last league game, which feels a couple of weeks ago and a lot's happened, but it's still their last league game. They lost 5-1 at Arsenal, and it looked like they turned a corner in terms of conceding goals and conceding them in quick succession, and the mentality issue, and then they concede 5 at Arsenal, and then they throw away yet another lead late on against Real Madrid, who were brilliant, but City still had that lead in their hands. And speaking to the players afterwards, they couldn't put the finger on why it keeps happening, which is probably more a concern than it actually is happening. The fact that they don't know and they've had so long to work out why is probably quite worrying.
How surprised have you been by this campaign and the drop off from Manchester City, where, as we said the last time we spoke, it was all about them winning the title again. But now, Saturday's game is about the battle for the top 4, maybe the top 5 for Champions League, rather than Manchester City looking to catch Liverpool.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the fixture list, and Rodri got injured in the middle of September, and City played Newcastle at St James's at the end of September. So there were just a couple of games into wondering how are they going to play without him. And I think if you've got everybody fit, you've got enough players to plug the gap. And we saw against Real Madrid that John Stones, if he is available, is a wonderful footballer and can play number 6, but he hasn't been available, and neither have countless other players. And when you add all of those things up, it's been really, really difficult for any sort of consistency for City. And yeah, they're not going to ask for sympathy. They're not going to get any sympathy. They've just gone and spent 150, 200 million on reinforcements in January. They can do that, but also there's only so much you can do when you're missing your players. And I mean, the Real Madrid game was the first time they've had a fully fit defence. They've only had Stones, Diaz, Akanji, and Ake available once all season, and that was against Real Madrid. And then Akanji goes off injured at half time, and now it looks like he's set for a spell on the sideline. So it's every time there's any sign of a step forward, there's another step back in terms of injuries, but it also doesn't excuse the same mistakes happening again. And we used to associate City with holding on to leads and coming back and just doing what they needed to do, and it was inevitable that they were going to win. But that's not the case anymore, and they are beatable, and they have been beaten quite a lot. And I think that's showing in just the way the players are going about it, and they don't believe that they're going to hold on to a lead, which is not what we expect from this team.
Yeah, that's good news for Newcastle United, though, isn't it? In terms of Pep Guardiola, because we know how good of a manager he is, he's arguably been the world's best for maybe the last few years. How has he been in kind of press conferences? Because obviously it has been a season that he's just not used to having to deal with. And I'm really intrigued to get your viewpoint as someone who speaks to him every other week, or maybe even every week when there's a game on, just how his mood's been and how he's kind of adapted to the challenge in front of him.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot has been made of his sort of body language and when he's scratching his face and stuff, and you can tell it's getting to him, and he must be as frustrated as anyone else. But when they were losing, they went on a run of 1 win in 13. He is never going to come out and criticise the players. But then they get a couple of wins, and I think they beat West Ham early in the new year, and he came out and hammered them because that was the first time he could have a go at the players. And I mean, we were asking him. I was in Turin in December for Juventus, and we were saying surely there is a confidence issue, a mentality issue, and he was adamant that there wasn't, and then they go and throw away another game, and he still insists that there isn't. So he has the players backs, and he's trying to keep things going, and he's also trying to defend his club. He's trying to make the point that they have got these injuries, they have got so many things going on, but yeah, at the same time, he won't make it excuses that that he doesn't need to make. He just wants to point out the facts. But yeah, he's certainly a lot more interesting, and you can ask those questions that maybe he doesn't want to get asked, which is not always the case. Normally it's, Pep, how good are you? Now it's, Pep, why are you not very good? And it's a different sort of dynamic in the press conferences.
One of my good pals is a Manchester City fan, and when Man City were on that horrible run of games where they couldn't pick up a victory, I texted him and I said, what is the issue here? And he came back and said to me, it's because he hasn't got as many as his coaches as he used to have when City were proper dominant. Now, I'm taking his viewpoint and I'm coming to you to ask that question. Is that something that you think is impacting Pep Guardiola for the reason that it's not been a brilliant season so far?
It hasn't. That's the first time I've thought of that as an issue. There's not been any major changes to the coaching staff from last year when they won the Premier League and the Club World Cup. But yeah, in recent years, obviously they've lost Arteta and Maresca and another coach called Rodolfo Borrell, and there has been changes pretty frequently every 2 years or so in the coaching staff. But I think it's, you can put it down to an aging squad which keeps popping up again. And I don't think in the summer anyone was saying they'd particularly done wrong in not signing too many players, and then suddenly all the players get injured, and you've got Gundogan back who's playing twice the amount of games that you would expect him to play. You've got Kyle Walker who suddenly just isn't playing well anymore, and it exposes those things. And I think Pep, to also go back to your previous question, one of the things Pep has done is backtracked on things that have normally been sort of cast iron beliefs of his, which is you need a small squad. He's come out and said, no, we need a bigger squad. And he also said in the summer he thought we didn't need a rebuild. And then he's saying, yes, City do need to go out and spend money, and he got that wrong. So I think a few things are quite obvious in hindsight. But yeah, for example, when we last spoke, we weren't saying they needed to go and sign 2 defenders and a midfielder and a forward in January, because that wasn't the case. It's just everything has mounted up to be a nightmare season. I saw a tweet this week that was like, maybe it's a good thing that it's all happening in one season. Just get all of the injuries out of the way. If you're not going to win the league, Liverpool deserve that league. Fine, get it out of the way and go again next season. But it does feel like it's one thing after another after another.
You mentioned just before about a mentality issue, and I think that's one thing that kind of every football fan can maybe pinpoint for Manchester City. And also, as you've mentioned, the fact that they do tend to be unable to hold on to games, whereas 2-3 years ago, there was absolutely no doubt they'd be winning these games. I mean, how does he fix that mentality issue? I mean, if we focus on Saturday, as we mentioned, we've got the defeat to Real Madrid in such exciting circumstances if you're not a City fan, and it just seems like there's not really probably enough time to turn that around. And also, it's bigger than Saturday, isn't it, for Manchester City? It's probably a bit more ingrained.
Yeah, well, there's a second leg, and they need to go there and win. And even though no one expects them to, they do believe that they can go and do it. They still insist that they can go toe to toe. And I mean, they did go toe to toe with Real Madrid. They were beating them. In the first half, they were better than them, and then injuries happen. And at their best, they are still a wonderful side and one of the best in the world. But yeah, it's just they've not got that look. And I do think whatever they say, that there is that confidence issue, and the stats speak for themselves about losing games from winning positions. I think they've lost more this season than the last 4 years combined. Now, Real Madrid are a different beast to other clubs, but they threw away a 3-goal lead against Feyenoord, and they lost to Brighton and Man United, and Brentford they drew against in the last couple of minutes. It's a continuing pattern that I think if you are an opposition side, when you would normally think, oh, we don't want to commit too many people forward because City will pick us off, if you get a goal, you never know what will happen. And I think it probably just shows that they are only human. There's so much going against them that it all adds up. And I think they're physically and mentally tired from what's been a really long season already.
Is there a bit more pressure on City coming into Saturday as well? Because as we said earlier in the show, this is really about the battle for a Champions League place and not a battle for the title. And whereas there's that expectation that City would have been so much higher in the league and actually going for the top spot rather than fourth, Newcastle United, I think, this is probably the top of the tree that they're aiming for, that Champions League place. I'm just wondering how you think that kind of expectation and disappointment as well, when you look at it, might affect City, and particularly on Saturday as well, because Newcastle and City are joint in the table, and it's only letters of the alphabet that separate them.
Well, that's it. You can talk about the second leg in Real Madrid, but City need to win this game, and for both teams, if they could get a 3-point gap over the other, it feels like that could be quite significant come the end of the season. So whatever City want to do, if Guardiola was thinking of resting anyone for Madrid, he probably can't, because A, it's such a big game, and B, he knows that Newcastle can hurt City at the same time. So maybe that can help them and just say, right, just focus on this game, forget about the Champions League for now. I mean, Pep always says that his first target of every season is finishing the top four. He doesn't think about titles until he's done that. This season has and will take longer to do that because of everything that's happened and the sort of competition for that fourth spot. I think it's looking like fifth spot might do it, which probably will be a help to maybe both of these teams. I mean, we're all expecting Nottingham Forest to drop off, but they keep on winning and they're proving to be quite a good side. And City have got to go to Forest in a couple of weeks. And I mean, City's fixture list at the moment, I'm not sure if you've seen it. They've just had Real Madrid. They went to Arsenal before that. Newcastle on Saturday, Real Madrid, Liverpool next week. They've got an FA Cup game. Then I think it's Tottenham and Nottingham Forest coming up. It doesn't stop. They've just got to keep facing these teams who they know can hurt them and hope that they get through in a position where come a month's time they're still in contention for top four space. And at the moment, I don't think you can go into any City game and think, yeah, they're going to win this, because it's not that kind of season anymore.
Well, it's funny, I wasn't aware of the City's fixtures after this, but actually they're not too dissimilar to Newcastle. Obviously, Newcastle have taken Arsenal out of the League Cup and secured their spot in the League Cup final. We obviously face City Saturday. Then we've got Forest and we've got Liverpool as well to come before West Ham, and then the League Cup final's not too far away. So the two teams aren't on a too dissimilar path, and it's going to be really, really interesting. Forest, of course, as you mentioned, there's the one that really kind of sticks out as the anomaly, but they deserve to be up there. I'm just looking here at Eddie Howe's press conference as we record now, and there was a lot of concern about injuries for Newcastle United. Anthony Gordon missed the game against Birmingham due to, I think it was a thigh problem. Sven Botman came off against Arsenal, absolutely colossal, but he had to come off, and there was a knee issue there. Dan Burn came off against Birmingham, and his groin was an issue, and Harvey Barnes has been missing for quite a while as well. But Newcastle United fans, if you haven't caught up, I'm going to bring you some excellent news, because Eddie Howe says Anthony Gordon should be fine. It's good news on Sven Botman's scan, no long-term issue. He probably will miss this weekend, but on Dan Burn, which I think was the one people were most concerned about, he's had a scan which was good. He has improved a lot very quickly, so he could be close this weekend. And Harvey Barnes is another one that can soon be in contention as well. So good news for Newcastle United there. And I think Dan Burn, as I said, there's particularly the best news out of that, alongside Anthony Gordon. But Dan Burn's been colossal this season. It's been his best season at Newcastle United, and I think he will relish going up against Erling Haaland on Saturday. How has Haaland been in recent weeks? I know he scored against Real Madrid, didn't he? But has he been his old self really?
Probably not, but he's still scoring goals, so you can never rule him out. He's getting increasingly frustrated with what's happening at the back. There's a video of him absolutely furious when Bellingham slides in and scores that winner, and he's at full time he shook two hands maximum and just stormed straight down the tunnel. And I think he's feeling it, the pressure. He did everything he could to get City into a winning position, and so many times this season he's been let down. But I mean, if this is a bad season for Haaland, he's still very much in the race for the Golden Boot, and he's still scoring goals for fun. And I will look forward to seeing another edition of the Haaland versus Burn rivalry, if you like, and that battle, because it's always good to see Haaland against someone who's got a sort of a similar physique as him, and they can have a proper battle. But of those, from a City perspective, I'd be more worried that Gordon is fit, because City have obviously let Kyle Walker go. He wasn't anywhere near the Kyle Walker we know, but he could still turn up for these games, and it's one less body at right back. Akanji looked really good at right back, kept Vinicius fairly quiet in the first half, then he goes off injured, and then it looks like it'll have to be Rico Lewis at right back. Now, I really like Rico Lewis. He started the season well. I think the last time I spoke to you, I was singing his praises, but he's just been overplayed, and he is sort of one of the players who looks absolutely shattered, and even a run out of the team doesn't particularly seem to have helped. And he comes on against Real Madrid, and they are just ruthless and move Kylian Mbappe over to that side. So he's got to stop Vinicius and Mbappe on his own, and it doesn't really go very well. So if you look at his run, without Akanji there, especially, who looks like he's going to be out, he's got Vinicius one week, Vinicius next week, Anthony Gordon, Heung-min Son, Mo Salah, they'll probably put on his side as well. He's a very good player on the ball, but one-on-one defending isn't necessarily his strong point. So if City have to rely on him, I think in his form, it's probably not the best. Alternatively, you put Mateus Nunes there, who's a bit stronger, but at least once a game will send you a very strong reminder that he is not a defender. So I would imagine if Gordon is fit, a lot of Newcastle's play will go down that side, just because City are a little bit weak at right back.
Well, hopefully it will happen. And he loves playing City, does Anthony Gordon. He always seems to find that extra little bit against Manchester City. He scored in the reversed fixture as well. Particularly did like playing up against Kyle Walker. So maybe he's a little bit sad he's headed off to Milan, but he will relish the challenge against Rico Lewis. I guess the other big question is how City will deal with Alexander Isak, who, for me, right now, there is not a better striker in world football than Alexander Isak. He is just in the form of his career. Everything he seems to touch just turns to gold. Look, City on this kind of, I'm not going to say downward spiral, because it's not quite that, but in the mood they are, conceding goals, not looking too strong at the back, they must look at Alexander Isak and just think, we don't really fancy stopping him today.
I mean, they always back themselves. And if you've got Ruben Dias fit, he loves a battle against anyone. Kanji missing again is a blow. Nathan Ake couldn't complete the full 90 against Real Madrid. John Stones is back. You probably have to move him back into defence, but Pep said he can't play twice in 5 days. So do you save him, especially with Akanji out for Real Madrid? Diaz is only back I think he's only played a game and a half since he's back from injury. So yeah, there's more fitness concerns in that attack. And then it's in that defence. I don't know how they'll go. You got a couple of young lads who could potentially come in, but you probably don't want to put a 20-year-old new signing and an 18-year-old new signing against someone like Isak. And it's the same thing. Like I said, they had Mbappe on Tuesday. They've got Isak this time, and they'll have Salah and co on next weekend. So they've just got to play whoever they can and whoever is fit, and weigh up. Do you prioritize this game for fitness or the Bernabeu? And when City have all the defenders back, they are one of the best defenders in the world. They've just not had those defenders all in the same unit. And I mean, I never like coming back to it, but Rodri helps a lot in that situation to stop these players. And it's always difficult to find that balance. So I think it'll depend on fitness, who plays, as much as anything.
Just a reminder, ladies and gents, this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. Do hit the link in the podcast description box to get a very special exclusive offer for our listeners and viewers of Everything is Black and White podcast. Protect yourself and support the podcast. We mentioned City's mentality issues. I do think there's a question over Newcastle's mentality issues as well, in the point that they just love games like this. They love going up against your Cities and your Arsenals, and I'm backing them to get a better result on Saturday than I am West Ham in a couple of weeks, just because this is how the season's panned out. And obviously, long-term, bigger picture, that's not where we want Newcastle United to be. We want them to be able to go and beat like everybody. But for Saturday, I'm all for it. As we've seen, they made light work of Arsenal really in the two leg of the semi-final. Give City a good test last time out. How do you look at Newcastle? What are you expecting from them?
I mean, if Newcastle play as they have, like you say, in those big games, then I think it'll be a real tough test for City. But then I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there have been a couple of results where if I'm putting a bet on a Saturday morning, it's Newcastle home win, and suddenly it's actually no, they've lost maybe 2 or 3-0 there, and it seems like they are a little bit up and down. But I mean, if you can't get up for a game like this against the City side who are now beatable, and also it'll define your top 4, top 5 hopes, I think both teams will be up for it. And I think Newcastle will look at the way City played in the second half and fell off, and know that even if they are trailing in the last quarter of the game, they can still maybe get something from City. And I think it'll be a real good game, a good battle. And I always think these games are maybe better at St James's Park in terms of end to end, and it's a bit more one sided at the Etihad. But I'm thinking we might get a bit more of an open game at the Etihad on Saturday.
Well, this is it. Newcastle's record at the Etihad is awful. I mean, they've only won once there, and that was in the League Cup. They've never won there in the Premier League, and I think they've lost the majority of the games there. But this season for Newcastle has been one where they've gone to grounds to face teams where the record has been awful. I'm looking at your neighbours across the city there. They went to Old Trafford and won there for the first time in the league in goodness knows how long. Went down to Arsenal in the League Cup, and that was I think only their first victory, or maybe their second victory at the Emirates. So they are going to teams where they've traditionally had bad luck and turn it around. So I am confident that they will get something from the Etihad. And I'm really intrigued as well by the midfield battle, because I think that's where these games are maybe sometimes won and lost. And it's going to be intriguing to see what Eddie Howe does. Does he do what he did against Arsenal, play 5 at the back and then push one of the centre backs into the middle to pick up when the ball comes over? Or does he stick to the formation he's been playing, where it's 3 across the middle, and then who comes in for Joe Linton, who will be missing, will be key. But in terms of Bruno and Tonali, I mean, they've been absolutely brilliant. How important do you think the midfield battle will be on Saturday?
I mean, that's where City have been overrun for the majority of games that they've lost this season, and the amount of times you never saw it before this season, but the amount of times teams will just steam through the middle and overload City and swing it one side or the other and put a ball in the box and score. It's been too easy, and again, that's where Rodri stops it. But they've not got him. Do you rest Bernardo and De Bruyne maybe for Madrid? Do they have the fitness to do that? I can see maybe the new signing Nico Gonzalez coming in. Kovacic came on against Real Madrid and basically gave away the winner, but he only played maybe sort of half an hour of that game. It's all weighing up the different pros and cons. But yeah, it will be I think if they can get on top of that midfield, that's probably where they win the game. And if they win those battles and spread it wide to Anthony Gordon, I can see that move in my head where the cross goes into Isak and it's a goal, and City don't really know what to do. And I think they'll be looking to find as solid a midfield as possible. Or do you continue having John Stones there, who looked really good? They had a system where Akanji, the fullback, and Guardiola, the other one, came in and made a sort of 3-man protection of the defence. That looked quite good against Real Madrid. If you can replicate that, maybe you sort of cancel out anything that Newcastle can do. So it'll be, as I say, all about personnel and who's fit and who has the legs to go against Newcastle and then Madrid as well.
And am I right in assuming that City's approach on the day with the ball will be the same as it has been for many a season, just try and pass the other side to death?
Yeah, they're not even with all the defeats and the poor form, even when they couldn't buy a win, they were still playing the same way. Guardiola will not abandon that. His players know in their heads, they know exactly what to do. It's just lapses of concentration that are letting them down. So they will continue to do that. They did it against Real Madrid. They'll do it against Real Madrid on Wednesday, and they'll do it against Newcastle on Saturday.
I think this is such an important game for Newcastle, obviously not just in terms of the battle for the top 4, but also to really set the tone of the next few weeks going into the League Cup final. The last time Newcastle made it to the final against Man United, their form tailed off so badly. And I think everyone kind of accepts they were thinking about the final, whereas this time it feels a little bit different. I said last week after we beat Arsenal that it felt a different kind of victory, a different kind of progression at the final to the last time. It felt like we belong now and we deserve it, kind of thing. And I think Eddie Howe will try and make sure that actually the final is so far away from their thinking, and the way to kind of start that off is by putting in a good performance against Manchester City, although it won't be easy. And he said that today in his press conference as well. Be a very difficult game. They are still a very good team for me. They are still the benchmark. We have to try and deliver our best performance to get the result we want from this match. They have a very good squad and have made some good additions in January. We need to produce in all aspects of our play to be competitive. So Eddie Howe being diplomatic as always. But I think he's right there. City are not the City of old, but they're still a very dangerous side, aren't they?
I mean, the first half against Real Madrid was as good as I've seen them this season. It felt like, I think they had 9 of the starters that started the 2023 Champions League final. It felt like the City of old with Guardiola, who's played really well this season, and just a couple of different additions, but they were very good, and it was only disrupted by injuries. And I mean, even Jack Grealish, who's been poor for 18 months, was playing really well and put a really good ball in for City to score. So this is what I mean. It's one step forward, one step back, and they just can't get any momentum. But the quality is always there. Haaland's still scoring goals. Foden's still showing that he's a brilliant player. De Bruyne, even though he's slower, can still have those moments of brilliance. And if they can just get it all to click and maybe face a team who the tactics suit them, and like you say, I don't know. You would expect Newcastle to come out firing, but you just don't know. You can beat City very easily this season, but you can also very easily ship 4 or 5. And Pep said against Real Madrid, he doesn't know which team's going to show up, and both teams that he was thinking the best and the worst probably did show up in that game. So he will hope that the better version is there on Saturday.
But Pep will be obviously looking at Newcastle's players, and I think the last time we spoke, we pinpointed Joe Linton as maybe the one who terrifies them the most, but Big Joe's not going to be available. Who do you think he will be looking out for in terms of trying just to stop him from hurting City on Saturday?
I mean, he's always liked Bruno, and if it is Joe Linton and Bruno and Tonali, that's a pretty formidable midfield trio. And I mean, I've mentioned Gordon. I think he could be key to whoever is at right back, who he will probably fancy skipping past a few times. And yeah, Isak is always gonna cause problems, and he's staying in my fantasy team because you can't trust City to keep a clean sheet at the moment. So it's I think it's going to be. I can see Newcastle scoring. I can also see City scoring. It's just who. It sounds very simple and very basic, but it's just who scores more and who keeps it as tight as they can at the back. But no, it's. I think every other time I've come on your podcast, I've said, yeah, City will win fairly easily. Newcastle might get one, but it'll be maybe a 3 or 4-1 win. I genuinely can't offer you a prediction because I don't know. Maybe 1-1, and that's probably being kind on.
Well, we'll take 1-1. Hopefully, it's all 3 points though for Newcastle. I've gone for 1-1 on Saturday, but I'm hoping in my heart that it's all 3 points, and that would be massive for Newcastle United, certainly in the battle for European football. Joe, thank you very much for popping on and providing the view from the opposition to you guys watching and listening. Hit subscribe, hit thumbs up, leave us a rating and review. Make sure you hit that link for your Node VPN plan as well, and I'll see you guys very soon.